This is Printed and Pressed. I'm Chris.
Whoa,
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Will.
Did the screen go out of order? Did the screen go like? Oh, my screen went blank for a second there. Whoa, that was weird.
Well, we just also
did it happen to you guys or
who was
no?
going next.
Yeah, no. I my screen went completely gray. Now you guys are back. Okay, we're good.
Right.
That was so strange. Okay, so today we are covering a book. This is actually taking the place of. I don't want to restart my computer in the middle of a podcast. Thank you, Windows. That is exactly what I needed to see. Okay. We're covering a book in between two series. So the next series we're doing is a sci-fi series. So this is a nice transition to do an indie writer who does sci-fi in between.
What's the next one we're doing?
Our series that we're doing.
Is it Dune is next?
And then Dune is next. Sorry about that. My other browser started playing my own voice and it was freaking me out.
Oh.
Okay.
Chris is having technical difficulties like an amateur today.
Can you guys hear me?
No time travel
like crazy on my end.
What?
You okay, Chris?
Yeah, you seem to be screwing up on your end, buddy.
I think it is screwing up on my end, yeah. Okay.
You sound
Are we good now? I think we're good now. Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to exit out of other tabs I have open. 1 second.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah. Have some random moaning. That wouldn't be good. That'd be hard to explain.
No. I could not figure out what's going on. Maybe it's Kindle. Something is dragging my internet down. Like, it's this stupid Apple software update. I'm sorry, guys. My apologies. See if that fixes things. Okay.
All
right. Anyways, like we said, we're doing now that I've ruined the opener to this podcast.
Real professional. We have not been doing this for 4 years.
Let's talk about the Footstep Echo duology by J.D. Sanderson. All right. So we put out a poll on Twitter, and we asked for indie writers to submit their works. And lo and behold, J.D. Sanderson found us and messaged us. And no, he didn't give us free copies, so there's that. But so our reviews are unbiased, completely unbiased. Yep, exactly. That's important, I think. But he is an indie writer, and he's got a lot of books, and he's working on a new book that he's releasing, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this word, so give me a break on this, but it's like S-Y-Z-Y-G-Y, Syzygy. Is that the right how you pronounce that? I'm not sure.
I'd have to see it. I have no idea.
Yeah, you really
so definitely go check that out if you like what you see here. Anyways, let's get into this review. So let's start with a recap of the story. There's time travel here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Does anybody want to jump in first, or should I take a shot at it and you guys correct me?
Okay, actually, no. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, you go. You go first.
So the intro. So the first book. Let's break this down. The first book has a completely different story than the second book.
Should we just describe the premise of it first? And
there's a lot of time traveling involved.
I mean,
okay. Let's start off with the first book. Who's the character you're following through?
Mostly Bernard in the first book.
And
what time? Like, where is he at in time?
2017.
And he's an old guy, like 70s.
He's an old widow, and what would you call somebody who lost their dog? Whatever.
He's a griever.
He's a grieving old man, but he still has got it. He's
lonely,
attractive.
He's not dementia ridden, that's for sure.
He got to that age where you're a catch for every lady that's also that age, because most of the men have died already.
That
is one way to interpret it.
Hey man, if you're still kicking it when you're into the nursing home age, you're very popular.
Bernard just had some serious swagger working in that library.
Yeah.
Apparently. So, long story short, Bernard works in a library with his friend. Oh, what was her name again? Ruth. That's right, Ruth. And I'm sorry, I'm reading too many books at once. But Ruth is a good friend of his. Kind of got him the job at the library. Knows that he used to do filing by hand and recognizes that he has a lack of
and lives down
savvy.
The hallway from him, which is
important. Work at
and lives down the hallway, right? And he did everything physically without a computer, with his indexing and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so he's probably what I would consider somebody who has OCD, because he's very particular about how he does things, and he refuses to learn his cell phone. So there's that. But That's not very uncommon. What I will say is,
Me too,
whenever we get into like sci-fi, the main character is not usually some 70-year-old dude. So that was a unique
twist.
It was a unique opening because you don't often see like the old guy protagonist. It's not very common. And so basically Bernard is just kind of like your run-of-the-mill old widow guy, doesn't really like view women as trying to date them or anything like that. He lives in New York, so like very busy area.
He's a relatable person that is easy for you to get into the world through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's not he's not crazy weird. So it's like, again, you can relate to say, obviously we're not 70, but we can relate to the situation that he's in. We can understand the struggle that he's having. So it's an easy introduction before the craziness that Chris is about to explain.
Yes.
So shortly into the book, probably within the first 40 pages, maybe 20 pages, he runs into this girl who actually runs into him, really. And she's not very polite, nor does she say anything to him. At least that's the view you get from Bernard, because he doesn't know what's going on.
Damn punk kids.
Pretty much. And essentially, he runs into her again on the doorstep of his apartment. He's in an apartment complex. I'm assuming. And she goes up there and like she's getting hassled by these guys that Bernard earlier said, thank God they've never hassled me because I don't know what I would do. Well, he sees her getting beaten up by these people, or at least look like she's going to get beat up by these people. And he steps in against his better judgment to help her, even though he felt that she was rude earlier. Mm-hmm. And thereby breaking up this would-be fight between these punks on the doorstep. Yep. And then discovers that his newly found friend doesn't have a home, doesn't have a place to go, and she's kind of mysterious.
That's one way of putting it.
Then shortly after that,
flash of white,
he finds out that, she can do crazy stuff, like disappear and go other places. And then, she's a time traveler. Mm-hmm. That's what she does. Well, he befriends this girl. They travel through time. They see different things, finds out there's something chasing her. Doesn't know what it is. Everything's kind of leading to this point where what's going on? We don't know. Nobody really seems to understand what's going on, especially not Bernard. Yeah. And so he keeps like hiding these experiences from his friends and what really is just Ruth. Mm-hmm. And then eventually,
Ruth,
she takes him. She takes him to the time frame where he lost his dog, and he knows that it's the time where he lost his dog.
Yeah.
And he goes, I know, stop. I know where my dog's going to be.
This was like stupidly emotional for me. It's like, I would be so happy to find my dog.
No, but Will, he steals his own dog.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I know.
He's lost his dog.
I know. I understood the what happened there, and it is kind of funny.
It's hilarious because he knows exactly where his dog was. Somehow.
Because he's the one that took it.
No, but I'm just saying he knew exactly where the dog ran to, and he's like, I couldn't find him. It's like, that's because you literally just.
That's because you took the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually, so funny story, full disclosure. I messaged the author of this book and I said, hey, I loved how you wrote the dog in as he stole it himself. And he literally messaged me back, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that's what I did with the story. Something like, let me read it word for word. I don't want to paraphrase and get it wrong. But when I told him that, he was like, what? Hold on, find it.
I mean, is one of the, so that's part of one is time travel is very hard. So you have to think of those kind of weird loopholes like that. But also it's kind of like the magic of storytelling, because no matter what book you're reading, the reader will find things that the author never intended.
Yeah.
I mean, we do this with a great example of this is Harry Potter. How many lore videos are there for Harry Potter? And J.K. Rowling is like basically, that's what I meant.
I mean, J.K. Rowling's great at that.
Yeah.
She's just like, screw it. I'll expand it however you guys want.
Yep.
Anyways, he wrote hysterical because I didn't even think of it like this when I wrote it. That's what he said when I asked him about him stealing his own dog. So anyways, that was something that I thought was lit. And immediately I messaged Andrew. I was like, he stole his own dog. And
dude,
oh my God.
I told you that before though. That you like, oh my gosh, I just realized he stole his own dog. Like, how did that take you so long, Chris?
That was literally my favorite part. No, because I was just at that part when I messaged you that.
Oh, then I was ahead of you for a while.
Yeah, you were ahead of me for a short period of time.
Okay.
But that was my favorite part of the whole book because it's so hilarious and so like touching and emotional at the same time. You stole your own dog, Bernard.
I will say how much of a loophole would it have been if he had like taken his wife in the same way? I guess
because we don't know how his wife died, do we?
She got hit by a bus or something, didn't she? Or a car wreck or something?
Right.
Right, but if he had taken her, then she just would have just. But then again, she would have been younger than he would have been.
Younger. Hey, some people wouldn't complain about that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it probably would have been. It wouldn't have taken much to explain why you're doing that. What
the
you're
only
doing.
problem, Will, is that it wouldn't have gone well with other people.
Fair, yeah, because
like if he saved her,
you never know what would have happened.
The only way you could have done it is you would have had to have had her say, "Hey, everybody, I'm going on a trip for some reason, a mission trip, and I have to go alone." And then she shows up later in time, and everyone's like, "Oh, you didn't age at all." And
strange.
So strange because she can't impact anything after she died, right? She'd have to show up in the future.
She would have to, exactly, yeah. Because like if you want to play the time loop game, if you go anywhere but the present when you come back, you know, you're affecting with the butterfly effect, right? Yeah. But I also look at it from another direction, like the idea of the time travel. Think about it this way: he kind of proves that the changes he made weren't changes because he stole his own dog, thereby he lost his dog earlier, which literally restores the timeline.
It's the normal time travel paradox. It's like everything's already happened.
So what he did is what happened.
It doesn't matter how many butterfly effects you have because all of those dimensions or different timelines all happen at the same time anyway. So you would never know. You would never know if you actually made a legit change unless you somehow totally different.
Something interesting he could have explored and piggybacked off of one of the most famous time travel books is The Time Machine, where he goes back specifically to save his wife and realizes that he can't get past that Nexus event. To borrow a Disney term, I don't remember what the hell they referred to it there, but basically every time he saves his wife, she just dies another way. So it's like it's impossible for him to get past that point.
That feels like what's that famous kind of B sci-fi with Final Destination? That kind of feels like that.
I mean,
like no matter how many things you avoid.
I mean, borrowing the idea from that story. Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but you are right.
Anyways, but as far as the story goes, so after he steals his own dog, he goes back to the future, and good, he's got his dog, right? Awesome. So the dog's his companion for the rest of the books at this point. And then that's when he meets like his Reagan's counterparts. Like there's Caleb and
the redhead girl that he's been interacting with. We find out her name eventually.
Oh, it's Reagan. Yeah.
Just to clarify for the reader, her name has been omited because it's.
She was a mystery girl.
She was unable to speak up until a certain point. And then there's Kay and Caleb. He meets both of these characters that are counterparts to Reagan, but he doesn't really know how or why or how they all fit together. But through Caleb, who gives him a bunch of backstory on Reagan, it sounds like Reagan is Caleb's friend. And then Kay, who sounds kind of sinister the way she speaks, also claims to be Reagan's friend. And eventually we hit this nexus point climax, whatever you want to call it in the story, where Reagan gets her memory back. Boom. She realizes she's part of some terrorist organization trying to burn down the future, and goes with Kay. Eco-terrorists. That's right.
Eco-terrorists.
Goes with Kay to go and essentially restore her position in the terrorist organization in the future and continue to wreak havoc on modern society at the time of 21 or 2301, I think is correct. And then Bernard gets taken to the future where Caleb explains to him all of the things that happened for 300 years since he, existed essentially. And he's like, oh my gosh, they solved everything. Because of course that's how futuristic stories are told. But
well, in the future, so they had like climate crisis of sorts. Well, it wasn't a polar reversal.
Yeah, it was a polar reversal.
Yeah. So they had which I liked that.
Because that is an actual thing that could happen.
I mean, it's a legit thing that's overdue, and we have absolutely no idea how it will actually impact the Earth. But unlike whatever your thoughts are on climate change and all of that, a pole reversal is a known thing that has happened.
And it would be devastating.
Yeah. So that led to a ridiculous technology boom where they've solved almost all the problems you could ever think of, right? That future,
but humans are still upset with each other.
well, no, almost
not really.
Not really. it's a very libertarian future government where the way they describe it. Because there's a lot more local decentralization and stuff, but it's like a shared vision that they all have.
Yeah, but the one thing that the modern society was not willing to tolerate was people going and doing their own thing on the land away from the modern lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's how you end up with, what's he called, the Mossbacks?
Yeah, Mossbacks, they're just a radical environmentalist group that's saying they destroyed the planet or something. And
well, to be fair, like, and this is where the story in my mind kind of is weird, because they ask for this one request to go live off the land, and the government was too scared to grant them that, so they end up becoming terrorists because they don't like that the government's telling them what to do. It's kind of anti-libertarian to me.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't set reserves, like
right, like give them a specific amount of land.
Brave New World, yeah.
Well, I mean,
yeah, like Brave New World would.
Yeah,
be
it was
good.
weird. It was weird because of how they did the government itself was overall pretty libertarian in the sense of like it was very spread out. It wasn't this centralized government. You had it where they all kind of collaborated with just like shared ideas, though. There was like a uniculture, I guess you would say. But a lot of the government wasn't all in one location. It was just spread out, and places kind of did their own thing. But they also shared exactly the same opinion on almost everything. It's kind of a weird way of
yeah. Well, he kind of explained it as like basically every need was met. So at that point, like, why would you fight? And then the Mossbacks found a reason. So
which, when you look at it, wasn't really a good one, because there's no like I failed to see how they destroyed the environment. I think that's the one thing that was never explained in this.
It was too mechanized for them, maybe.
It doesn't. I mean, maybe.
And also, it doesn't. They don't have to necessarily be right or have like an actual reason. It's they believe that they have a reason, which is the foundation for most extremist groups.
Right. Yeah, it's an odd group. They also wanted to protect other planets from human colonization. So
yeah, which also that kind of cracked me up because there's no life on other planets. So you're not destroying anything.
I wish the Mossbacks. I wish the Mossbacks had been like the Mormon Church in The Expanse, because their whole thing. If you've ever seen the movie, the TV series The Expanse, which is based on the books, the Mormons basically make it like spend tons of money for like a giant spaceship that they're going to take to colonize other worlds. So. They're leaving behind the tainted Earth to go somewhere else to be their paradise. It's kind of funny.
Oh yeah, and then on top of all that, after we find out that Reagan is kind of leader of this eco-terrorist group, at least one of the cells of
she's one of four. One of four.
They have a tetrarchy amongst this group of eco-terrorists. Anyways, long story short,
one like overarching leader, which will be important at the end.
Right. Long story short, though, essentially what occurs after that is they lead a series of events, causing terror amongst the modern society. And then they're like, we need Bernard for some reason to go find Reagan, because they think that he might be able to get through to her or find her or whatever. And so Caleb and his group, including Tal, and there's a couple other characters. I don't remember all their names, to be honest with you. But Caleb and Tal and the team, Donner, they all pick up Bernard, bring him to the future, and then of course he gets captured by Reagan and her team.
They needed him because he just spent time with her when she was just willy-nilly jumping around, giving away locations and habits that were just natural to her, without her having the mindset of I have to conceal my behaviors.
Right, that's true.
That's the whole reason they're trying to find any hints of when she was on the run in a panicked, memory deprived state where she might be. And then they all get really close to him, and that's when Reagan decides she's going to capture him to lure them in for guilt of having drug him into this whole issue, right?
Right.
So that's where this book basically ends the first one, right? With her using him as a trap for the rest of the team. And then there's a major conflict between, we forgot to mention the stimulants.
So K is a simulant, not stimulant.
Stimulants.
We're not drinking some.
Hey man, they're doing
some caffeine.
Hey, Tal does do drugs in this.
Yes, she does. And what's funny is that tripped me up too. I was like, why are you drinking like these like mechanical pills? Oh, it's a stimulant.
So the best part is you find out through when Reagan is taken by K or leaves with K, Caleb has shot K, and you find out that K is part machine because she bleeds like blue or something.
Yeah, blue goo.
And you see some other stuff going on. But
she crawls around like Terminator.
Yeah.
So this interwoven story is you find out that the simulants are on the eco-terrorist side because humans have essentially rejected them.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, but they feel rejected by society because they were created and then abandoned, essentially.
Yeah. In fairness, they also made themselves different.
They did, yeah.
Which you find out in book 2.
Right, like they changed their eye colors to all be the same. Yeah, anyway, there's a whole big deal.
Secret language.
Right. And then going forward, you find out all kind of like the intricacies of the modern world, in which then you find out that that Kay and some of the other simulants are mad because Reagan is giving special treatment to captured Bernard and giving him all kinds of things that are like creature comforts and keeping him kind of pampered and allowed to do whatever he wants.
He's an old man. He had a heart attack and stuff.
She treats him like a pet. Yes. She treats him like a loved pet at this time. Which Bernard realizes, like, this is an unhealthy relationship. She's never going to let him return to his newfound love interest, Ruth, which he has stoked. Like
Bernard has serious pull.
Yeah. He
charms a young going back just because you bring up the simulants and the simulant's upset with this relationship. There's a scene where the simulant picks him up by his jaw. I have to ask about the mechanics of that. And how that wouldn't just rip his jaw off, or at the very least attach it. Like,
that'd be pretty hard to do. I'm not sure what the exact.
I think it's just grabbing him right at the neck under the jaw.
That's what I'm guessing too. But basically, what I think happens here is Reagan shoots the simulant, gets mad for the preferential treatment for Bernard, who's not behaving himself.
And that's when the simulants decide they're going to betray her.
And they take matters into their own hands and steal Bernard.
So, I mean, then there's the whole conflict of rescuing him, and then
Reagan goes to work with her old team to get Bernard back. She cares more about him than her eco-terrorist organization, which says a lot about her commitment to the eco-terrorist organization.
She's a really bad commitment to all of the teams she's on. Let's be honest here.
Like, you don't know if she's going to be on your team on Monday after she joined the team Friday. Like, it could change over a weekend. You never know with Reagan.
I mean, they all go to rescue him. They manage to, but one of the good guys dies. I mean, I assume he dies. He's teleported away, and they don't really know what happens to him. They never tell us what happens to him.
He gets teleported to, the Jurassic era. And he gets
wherever it is. Yeah. So, I mean, that's basically the end of that first book.
Well, the end of the book is Bernard goes back to his own timeline after he's saved.
Well, yeah.
Reagan's on the run because she escaped captivity.
She's now sabotaging the Mossbacks.
Once you find out, the end of the book is Caleb getting promoted because they find out the leader of their science organization is actually working for the Mossbacks.
Yeah.
And he's like the head of all the cells.
And Reagan dismantles the organization altogether, basically.
Pretty much, yeah, by doing what she did. And then, just for the record, spoilers, but we get into book 2. And for you two, book 2 is kind of where a lot of this stuff falls apart.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the main antagonist in book 2. And I feel like something was off about how he was written. Because going through the book, he's like the bad guy, right? And then you find out his backstory. And the only time I really like, he's a bad guy, don't get me wrong, he's definitely an anti-hero at the beginning at the very least, but going through his backstory, like, he seems like he's avenging his wife and his sister, I think, if I remember correctly. It's one of his family members was affected by this. And if it's stuck with the avenging story, like, really, is he the bad guy here? But then it goes into him just like literally killing people. And then it goes into like, well, he was obsessed with his wife. I feel like the backstory of him was kind of written into it later on when he realized like, oh, this guy is not really a bad guy. Let's make him a real bad guy. That's kind of how I viewed it.
After he got feedback from his beta readers, that's what happened.
Like it seems like because his past isn't revealed until way later in the story.
I don't know.
Otherwise, he's just some mad serial killer killing people.
I'm conflicted on him because he's ridiculously good at everything, and I wish he had a little bit more of a badass background. His background does not. But
isn't he just basically a Martian or whatever planet?
His background does not explain
how he got all these insanely superhuman
righteous anger.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, he definitely became obsessed with avenging his wife and sister to the point where he lost all, semblance of self and only cared about vengeance. And the second book, by the way, is called The Clock's Knell.
Mm-hmm. I had one problem though with Reagan in like with how book 2 starts. She kind of has a redemption thing with everybody, but she's never punished. So like I low-key have a massive issue with redemption without punishment.
I mean, technically she's punished until she isn't.
Yeah.
And her real punishment is she doesn't get to raise her own child. So like that's a pretty big deal.
But that's at the end. Everyone's already like, I don't know. She got away with a lot until that.
She did get away with a lot, but she never gets like here. Okay, let's get through the second story. So the second story opens up with brutal murder by some guy. Nobody knows why, but they know that he's going after ex-Mossback, new life starters, people that left the Mossback organization at a young, like they were part of it young.
Never forgive, never forget.
Pretty much. So this guy's motto essentially is he's just killing everybody. The best part is halfway through the story, you realize that the guy doesn't have a time travel device. And so everything that happened prior to that in the book was because he gets the time travel device later in the book. So it's like, oh my gosh. Like if they wouldn't have let him get that time travel device, none of that happens. But then again, same thing with earlier. If something happens in the timeline, it was meant to happen, and it happens no matter whether you try to change it or not. Right, except for at the end when he does change time, but that's a different story.
I think that's one of those things that makes me not really usually read these types of books about time travel, just because they get so messy.
Yeah, it's really hard to keep them succinct and not create paradoxes.
But the opening of this second book is essentially Reagan and the team, the friends, all are visiting with Bernard. He's now with Ruth. I don't remember if they're married or just together.
No, they're just together.
And Maverick's living. So they're all living together. So Ruth and Bernard are together and Maverick. And they're all living in the apartment together. And the group keeps coming back to visit. They maintain their friendship. And then all hell breaks loose with all these murders.
Well, early on in this book, Reagan takes Bernard to go to Mars, basically.
That's right. Yeah, she shows him what it looks like and whatnot. Yep. And then she gets captured because they are looking for her.
Yep. And then
because if something is broken and they couldn't jump back.
Yeah, and then based off of the fact that this guy is hunting her for his vengeance,
right?
And then is attacking people she cares about to do what she did to him is what his justification is, to take away everyone that cares about you.
Typical.
Or that she cares about. Yeah. So
he go in for the kill.
He attacks them when she's at Bernard's place, and he causes Bernard to his heart to fail, basically, just by the shock of everything. Mm-hmm. So Bernard dies in this book very early. Spoiler. Yes.
I would say about 30% in.
He was on borrowed time, and he had a heart attack in the first book too.
He had multiple heart attacks that were fixed sort of in the future, but he was kind of told like, hey, if you don't fix your lifestyle in the past, you're still going to die.
Yeah. So, I mean, this book is Reagan basically getting captured a lot. It's like 2 times she gets captured.
But she knows that, the best part about this whole story is we have this extremely high-tech organization, and somehow this one dude just
just demolishes the
just
stuff.
wrecks
Well,
the
in
whole
fairness,
place.
he has these weapons that they're not used to fighting against because it's like people are disarmed.
Right, that's
in
true.
General,
kind of like Demolition Man. Like nobody has weapons.
Yeah, since it's such a peaceful society, no one finds the need for weapons.
Yeah,
so
right.
You're all sitting ducks for that one that does get it. There was one line in here that I actually liked because he introduces another character who's a shrink, basically.
I did like the shrink a lot. He was a good character.
Who's brought in to analyze Reagan and support the findings, basically, for her trial and everything. That
was like Wall. It was like Wall something, wasn't it? Wall. Well, started like a W-A.
I don't remember.
I don't know. It was a W name.
So, a good line that I liked in here though was where they were like, perhaps the biggest casualty of our growth as a people was losing the ability to relate to those who still suffer or long for something else than what we deem important.
That was a good one. Yeah.
Weldon. His name was Weldon.
So it's one of those things where they made generic general populace is so comfortable and devoid of what it is to suffer or want something. But if someone wants something that's different, they can't relate at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then view it as a threat. It's an interesting take.
We also have the pseudo bicentennial man who's totally okay with, expiring as he's helping these people just in case they actually can help him go back to the past and meet his master. It was like this.
Well, yeah, you have that. They have the what was his name again? I forget.
He was like the OG simulant.
Yeah, the original simulant, and Ken or something like that. No, but
yeah, it was something like that.
He
was originally number 3.
Yeah, and it's interesting how he talks about the simulants in this, about how they take
Kelm. It was Kelm.
Kelm, yeah. How they took over their own manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which is mentioned in the first book.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good backstory / touch on these AI robots, just because you could totally see even the AI that we're trying to develop right now as a people they're already making it where it can code, right? So it's a matter of time before it starts coding itself, and then it's its own coding language, and people don't know how to do anything with it. So that's a good take for the way they go forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was actually probably the best side story in this story, because there's a lot. I feel like this one has more side stories than the first one did.
Yeah, I mean, he has a lot in here. In the second one, he does a lot where people are kind of the struggles people still have in the world despite all of the utopian aspects. So
I feel like in order to do this story justice, he needed more in it.
A little bit. But like, okay, for example, Adelaide, you find out in this one that she couldn't conceive.
Right.
And yet she also chose not to modify herself, even though the technology existed.
Mm-hmm.
Because so there was a little bit of an anti-transhumanist message in here, which I thought was kind of interesting.
For the record, I agree with that notion.
No, yeah, I agree with it. I just saw it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, given the fact that you got all these simulants and stuff, and it's like, yeah, I guess I would have expected way more of like the body modification things, but like
the cyberpunk style.
Yeah, and even one of the characters in here refuses to get the robotic eye. They just regrow, they clone his eye and give him the transplant.
I forget if that was Donner Cat. No, Donner died in the first one.
The other guy.
Yeah, but this is also a society post a weird simulant crisis almost. So
true.
It could be a reaction to that. Whereas before, people were really more embracing it.
That's fair. Yeah, there just seemed in this story there seemed to be like an anti-transhumanist message, which I thought was interesting.
which is unusual for most futuristic stories.
Yeah, it's one of those things that is you don't really expect it. So that was a nice change of pace in the sci-fi genre, I think.
Yeah, actually, this I think dovetails nicely into the book that we're covering next is Dune. Dune also has a body modification. They don't like doing it.
When do you think we're covering Dune?
3 weeks from now.
Did you change something?
No, it's not 3 weeks from now.
I have no idea. What's the next sci-fi book?
It's like a month. It's over.
No. The next sci-fi book is the C.S. Lewis trilogy.
Yeah,
that's the next series book.
Will's looking at the calendar recently.
No, he has not been apparently.
Oh man, I got excited. I thought Dune was coming up because
I mean, dude, I mean, if you want to rearrange your books,
it's totally fine. We should focus on this though.
Sorry, go ahead.
I wouldn't have.
But I do think it would be interesting. I do think it would be interesting to compare thoughts in different sci-fi books about how the future will be. That'd be an interesting podcast episode. Anyways, moving on from that though.
Well, it's not moving on from that yet, Chris.
Oh, go ahead.
I think with sci-fi, it's an interesting take usually. The reason this stands out as so much to me, I think, is that often enough in sci-fi, the author will always just be like, what is possible, not should it be, not the should we do it type of thing. So I never really see that should we do it get talked about as much as it probably should be.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, most authors just say, yep, this is here.
Yeah, like it's possible. We're pushing every boundary as far as we can because that's just what we do in the future. There's never this like, hey, now what could go wrong with this aspect? I know they tend to love dystopian and totalitarian things, but
go ahead.
I was just going to say it's a nice switch up to see technology viewed maybe a little bit responsibly because there's always that pushback on technology. And I feel like a lot of sci-fi omits that there is that pushback in the timeline. So, yeah.
One of the things that I thought was extremely interesting about this is they perfect time travel and then the group in charge of the science group says, yeah, let's not continue on with this. Let's do this other project now. And I'm like, that is totally how these science organizations operate. It's like, yeah, we've done this, but we don't really see how we're going to make money doing it, nor do we think it's a good idea. So let's do the next thing. And I'm like, that is.
They would make money on the transportation of goods, I would say, with the teleportation.
It would, but how do you do it?
What do you mean?
Like you're gonna go back to the past and steal crates of tea?
No.
Tea party?
It can teleport.
You don't do it as a time travel. You do it literally by like milliseconds between locations.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point, actually.
Yeah, and strap the device to like a pallet, giant pallet, and transport goods that way.
It'd make executions much easier. Strap it onto inmate number 679. Boom. T-Rex is going to eat you.
Yep.
What?
Hey, Chris, that could ruin everything by importing bacteria.
Yeah.
You're right. That's true. Send them so far into the future. I don't know what you do.
in the second book, if we're moving on still, we find out that Reagan has a daughter who
that's towards the end, yeah.
Who decided to go back in time and not give any craps about the
changing the timeline.
Yeah, changing the timeline or anything. So she just does it. And it's
so here's something that I was thinking about as I got to the end though. So Reagan does wind up captured initially and then she escapes, right?
I mean, she's captured multiple times and
here's what I'm thinking is that maybe Reagan wasn't actually captured and they just said she was so that they could have the props for having her in there. Because who's going to go in and check on this maximum security prisoner in isolation?
Yeah, that's the context you needed to add, Chris, is they want to put her in solitary confinement.
For the rest of her life.
Yeah.
So to say that, like, who's to say that future was actually altered? Maybe she wasn't actually in that cell and they just said she was.
Because I think the problem is he kind of writes it where it is changed.
I mean, it's possible. I'm not saying
No,
you're
no,
wrong,
I'm
Andrew.
saying no.
I'm just saying there's a way
problem,
this logic works.
There is, but I'm telling you that I think the problem is that the author writes it where if I remember correctly, the ending it comes off as changed.
I think you're probably right, but I think logically you could just write it off as she's not actually in the cell. They're just saying she is, so they can claim the W on this one.
Yes,
because the government is underhanded. When you look at the way Secretary Jara and all that operate, like clearly there's some politics going on here.
Yes, I would say that if you wanted to revise the book, Chris, you're not wrong.
Or if you wrote a book 3, you could easily summarize like the timeline wasn't actually changed. The whole time Reagan had been watching her daughter grow up in Tal's house, didn't say anything because Tal was such a good mother, blah, 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 blah. Boom, 3rd book started.
Yeah, I mean, it's all possible.
You don't necessarily have to revise the 2nd book. You just have to explain away that ending in a way that makes sense.
I wish the time travel had a little bit more explicit rules to it, though.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
That's the one thing where I can't really strap down what the rules are.
Another thing is, I realize it isn't always. No, it always is when you're in a time travel story. They establish which timeline, like which point in time is the quote unquote real point in time. So like if it's Bernard's point in time, then him traveling to the future has no impact. And
right, not his life.
No. But like so him changing the future isn't a problem. So changing the past again, it gets messy because like who is someone changing the past or are you changing your future? And like that was always going to happen that way.
Right. Because you're not like, are you actually changing anything?
Yeah.
Right.
But also if you do change something, like are you having a consequence that's negative, or is just like you're just choosing, I'm just going right today instead of left today?
Like, you went back to the past and now everybody has beta tapes instead of VHS tapes. Like, whoops, I messed up.
Yeah, I mean,
Betamax. That's right.
This is the reason why I don't typically read
time travel.
Yeah, that's why I typically don't read those types of books.
Yeah, it is a very hard thing because again, I think Andrew and I were talking about this before. You really have to have a Bible that goes, and you have to like lay out all the rules before you start, and then make sure you don't violate those rules as you're going through. It is a very difficult thing. I mean, even like multi-million-dollar corporations can't get it correct most of the time. Like Disney right now,
well, I mean,
completely ruining their time travel stories.
There are so many time traveling stories. Like, for example, Back to the Future. This was written like a long time ago, right? There are still people today, like decades later, finding plot holes in Back to the Future.
The whole movie,
they're new ones, new plot holes in an old story.
It's fine. It's fine in a movie. Like that's like when it's a fun movie like that, it's fine.
I understand. I'm just saying, like, there are still people breaking down that story, looking for plot holes from 30 plus
I
years
just want to
ago.
point out the problem is that there's people literally analyzing Back to the Future.
People want Back to the Future 4, but they won't admit it.
No, they don't want to admit it. That was the most hated video we've ever talked about.
And Andrew was part of it before he was part of the podcast.
Yeah.
We got so much hate for that.
Dude, we got a ton of hate, and it's still the perfect thing to bring back. And it's those people can scream.
If we ever re-review one of our old videos, that's the one.
Yeah, it would be
Anyways.
fun. Go
ahead.
Oh, you can go.
Is there any more plot points we want to highlight before we get into reviewing the book itself?
Plot points. It's just the time, like we said, the rules of the time travel. It brings the question, right, of every single conflict in this. You wonder why the conflict is happening at that specific point in time. So, I know Will's big thing was like, so why didn't they just go stop the explosion?
Right.
At the laboratory, it's like, that's a valid question.
Yeah, the thing is, so he probably had his own, like the rules he laid out in his head, but as it's written, there's too many instances where, as a reader, you have this question and then it's not satisfied later.
Right. So there's a rule, right, where they don't go back in time where they can be seen by too many people or whatever doing that and then influencing the timeline, which they don't seem to have a problem interacting with Bernard and Ruth.
Right.
Yeah. Another
over
problem
and over and over again.
is that, and I brought this up with
maybe they already knew that Bernard had that because maybe it was in some files somewhere.
No, it's because Reagan just broke it, so it doesn't matter.
So it didn't matter
at that point. The seal's already been broken with those two.
That's
true. They're old, so it doesn't really matter. But when it comes to a lot of the conflict, I was like, she was there at this point in time.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Why can't you guys just, I don't know,
grab her immediately?
Yeah, so it's like if you had a rule where like, oh no, that device disrupted the time around it, it would have made more sense. But the problem is then you wouldn't have been able to have them all jumping back to meet at specific times.
Yes.
It's just, that's where it gets messy, right?
Mm-hmm. And again, like the whole idea that you have this device that like will slow her down and not let her jump, you just keep going back to that point till you catch her.
Right. No, I mean, and that's where it gets weird. So
yeah. So again, to your point, that would have been a simple rule to introduce. Like you couldn't jump back to the same point that same device had been at. That actually been like, I mean, that would have solved basically everything that all the problems I had with it.
Except for the fact that then he wouldn't have been able to use the meeting places over and over again.
They could have done the meeting places, but just have them hit that point like 20 minutes apart or something. So there could have been like amount of time that like they would have to wait for each other. But
right.
Yeah.
No, that would have gone a long way.
And then also have it where like their headquarter science lab was able to dispel that distortion, so they could all jump back to the laboratory at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But
I liked how we had the rule about them not being able to jump into the future.
Yep.
That was nice.
Oh, there was one more thing that they did that I thought was cool, was when they all jumped at the same time at a different time of day in the same day to have their meeting. So like one person might jump at like 10 a.m. and they're all going from the bathroom. Like they kind of cracked me up. They're like all going to the bathroom at different times of day, but all jumping from the bathroom to all meet at the same place. Like at the same time that's cool. Like imagine that Caleb, he knows at 10 a.m. what the plan is. And then like Tal finds out at 6 p.m. So he knows for 6 hours before she finds out. I don't know. It's kind of.
And what happens if he tells them the plan?
I know. I'm just like, oh my.
Time travel paradox. They would had to have discussed that. It was like, we can't tell each other what happens.
Well, they weren't working with each other all day, so it made sense.
They were working separately.
Yeah.
So they couldn't have done that.
The only other thing, which I give a pass because it's an indie author, it doesn't get the same scrutiny. There's a lot of there's decent number of typos in the book.
Yeah, I mean there are definitely, but the thing is like with the Kindle version, I think he can probably clean that up if he wanted to.
He could, because in the Kindle version it's primarily theirs, thus, and theys.
I think you can submit edits to, and I don't know enough about it because I haven't submitted my own book yet. But my friend Eric has, and I think you can submit revisions when required. Yeah,
I'm just saying that the only problem with that was like the theirs and thus and that type of stuff.
Now, just to be thorough, though, Will has the physical versions. We made sure one of us did.
Yeah, so I have the physical version, and unfortunately, I think like the translation for maybe the Kindle version into this really screwed up the, formatting. And there's quite a few instances where you have like a double tab or a random paragraph break in the middle of a sentence. Mm-hmm. And although like it obviously doesn't ruin the story, it definitely threw me off when I was going through reading it. Yeah.
Why don't you show the physical books, Will, just for fun?
I don't think you can see it with the camera.
Well, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you have to turn off your.
Yeah, I have to turn it off. It's the same cover as what you had up, so it's essentially the same idea. The only difference is, do you have like the back page that says like the summary of the book?
I don't know if it has that. Let me double check. On the Kindle version, it might not. Is that what it says on the back?
No, so I have like a back cover actually.
Right.
And the back cover is just a summary of the book and then like a blurb from another author.
Oh. Yeah, no, there's none of that on here. Yeah. Nope.
So I think that's probably the only differences is those things. But yeah, other than like some of the typos and like the obvious like translational issue, I thought it was fine.
So, I mean, you're basically saying is like you're giving a pass to things that if this were a traditional publisher with a publishing house, like
that would drive me insane, man.
Yeah, if you had published this to Penguin, then I would have been like, "What happened?"
And just for the record, too, that book 1's typos are a lot less egregious than book 2, and I never really thought of myself as a grammar Nazi and stuff like that, but when it comes to book 2, it did kind of wear on me a little. Just a little.
Fair enough. I think it's always, regardless of the level of publishing effort or money thrown behind something, I think it's always good to give the real critique rather than to give a pass all the time. So I didn't notice as many typos in the first one, like Andrew said, but I will say on the second one, there seemed to be less editing involved.
Mm-hmm.
I think overall, what finally got me to like the second one was the 2 story arcs that kind of come to a head at the end with Callan meeting his maker, having that nice little situation come to a nice ending. But then you also have the bittersweet ending with Reagan having to give up her daughter to Tal, which is basically her consequence for everything she did in the first book. That's the final consequence, is she doesn't get to raise her own daughter. And it was kind of a bittersweet but understandable ending.
Yeah, I like the ending of the first book too. You didn't bring up the fact that the leader was actually part of the scientist organization the whole time.
Yeah, I did. We talked about that.
He did?
Yeah. That's how Reagan gets out of that's how Caleb gets promoted, doesn't get accused of all his issues.
Wow, I clearly zoned out. I was like, I wanted to remind you to bring that up for like the last 10 minutes.
It was an inside job. That's why this team was assigned to nonsense for the whole time, and they had
because he wanted to throw them off the whole time.
Yeah. No, it was good. That's good. Okay, sorry.
There was also that whole situation where they used that whatever technology to make everything just disappear. Remember that? Like the space station just like goes away from like whatever they did. And they had to like reboot the entire project, and they killed like a massive amount. You know what I'm talking about? The eco-terrorists what they actually did that led to the death of like hundreds of people.
How did they? I forget how they did it, but they were using the technology to cause like micro tears on. Like they were using the system to just like do like a crap ton of jumps around the structural design of it, because it does a little bit of damage all the time.
So honestly, that whole I don't see how you could forgive Reagan for doing that. Period.
You can't. Yeah. No.
Like, so as a I understand why the government's not going to just let her have a pass, because once she's committed, I'm glad that he didn't just give her the pass, because it does lead to that bittersweet ending where she gives up her daughter. But also, like, you can't forgive somebody who does that. Like, it just you can't.
But they do technically. Just
saying.
They technically do.
Her old team does, but I imagine society does not.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't think I could be like her team and forgive that either, though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
You
get a main perspective bias where you start to forgive the main character.
I did,
and then I'm like, no, you don't forgive that. Like, you can't forgive that. Anyway. So the first book, do we all agree that the first book was better than the second book?
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
Okay. Although I did like Callan a lot. He was a good character.
Do we want to do our ratings?
Let's do our ratings.
Yeah.
Do we want to do it as separate per part, or?
Well, overall? I think we do separate and then overall, because the story is continuous. So like rate each book and then rate the books together. So we'll give 3 numbers, I guess.
Do you want to go first, or?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I'll give book 1 a 4.
Okay.
That's where I'll give it. I'll give it a 4 out of 5, because we do rating. Yeah, not a 4 out of 10. 4 out of 5, because we don't do 2 out of 10s, except whatever the weird system is on book clubs that makes us do 10s. But 4 out of 5 for the first book, and then for the second book, I'm torn between like a 3 or 3.5. I'll give the second one a 3.5. I'll give it a 4. I'll give them both 4s, but the first book's better because I know you guys are going to tank my rating at least.
Oh my god, I can't believe you're doing this. Okay.
All right, go ahead, Andrew.
3 for the first one, 2 for the second. Overall, it's a 3.
Oh, I didn't give the overall, but it would be a 4, I guess.
For me, overall, it's a 3. The second one just adds some extra like plot holes that I don't like. I feel like the first one was more like the time travel aspect of the first book is significantly better done, even though there's the question of like why haven't you traveled to here or there type of thing at like this specific time versus the time you chose. But in number 2, it starts to feel like it's conflicted. There's like a little bit of it's not set in stone what the rules are. And
I think the ending where he's like basically says like whatever we change time kind of promotes not doing another book in this series. Like if he wanted to continue on with this series and Reagan was captured, he could have at least used that as a reason to continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that plot hole, for example, right there where bringing the future daughter in is what I didn't really like. But that's why it's a 2. Then yeah, that might be the main reason I said that. So what about you, Will?
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna give the exact same scores as Andrew. I really enjoyed the premise, and I think he has good characters, and he has a good sense of what he wanted to do with the characters. There's the plot holes that we mentioned, the grammar mistakes. So like another couple of read-throughs, and this would have been a 4, if not a 5 for me. I really enjoyed
the second book, or both?
Both.
First.
Well, yeah, I guess for the first one, yeah, and then the second one, again, just going through and cleaning up some of the grammar mistakes, cleaning up some of those plot holes, and like actually thinking through, okay, well, these are the laws I'm applying to this universe. I'm using this technology and following through on it. Yeah, I did like the premise. I also like the characters.
I mean, that I'll add into my review too what you said, Will. It's like if he cleaned it up a little bit on the first book, it's easily a 4. It just needed a little extra work there with the rules and everything. And book 2, some of those deviations, the plot holes are a little bit too big, so I question the book existing. I'm saying like
the way you said that, I question the existence of this book.
Okay, I question the existence of book 2 as it is if he put the effort in, like the same, like if he built the rule set and then went to rewrite book 2. I feel like it'd be a very different book.
Yeah, it might drastically change. That's true.
Yeah, so that's the only reason I give the second book a 2. If he went back and rewrote it with the rules set in place, it would be a very different book, and I think it would probably be more aligned with book 1. So I could see it being also potential to be a 4, because he really does take in a unique perspective to the sci-fi genre, which I like having an old guy for once. Just that's random. The take where like just about the people, the comfort of like how people no longer understand what it's like to want something different. There's a lot of good concepts.
And honestly, I don't know what this next book is he's writing, but I wouldn't mind seeing another book in this universe he's created, maybe away from the time travel. Just talking about the simulants or the society at large. Some of these colonies sound really cool. That would be having just a story dedicated there. That'd be neat.
He got into some good world building in book 2.
Well, here's his next book. In case anybody's curious, his next book. Here's the description. He put it on Twitter about 13 hours ago, and the pre-sale is live. I don't know what the book costs. I haven't looked it up yet, but it says in 1977 we sent out the golden record on the Voyager spacecraft. Decades later,
he is following up on his own story then, because that is a plot point in the. I'm sorry, go on.
It might be in the same universe, but he has assured me this is not part of the same story. Decades later, an alien message found its way to us. As the centuries pass, we'll work to answer one question: will we find them?
They're called. Start with a T. It was like Trilo.
Yeah, that was literally.
Yeah, because that was a plot point in
the
new. Yes, I understand what you're saying, Will.
Yeah,
but let me see. Let me see how much this one costs.
But yeah, actually, when I saw that, I read that for the first time, I was like, "Ooh, yeah, I would actually like a story about this." So I'm excited.
And the book is following the same price structure of the last two. It's only $2.99. So that is one thing I will give him, despite the editing issues that we've already mentioned. The books are only $2.99. Like he's not charging you $15.
I mean, it's definitely worth the price. Yes. I'll say this: the book is enjoyable and worth the price. It's not like you're being robbed here.
No, and if you have the Kindle Unlimited, it's free. So
I guess the frustration with me, why I still was ranking a little bit lower is just because I think he has something here.
Yeah.
So I want him to put in that a little bit extra effort, and I want him to actually try to publish this like through traditional publishing.
Yeah, no, I second that completely.
I think he's got a very good. He's got good ideas for a sci-fi writer that you don't see in most other sci-fi writer stories.
The concepts he has punches well above the rating we've given.
Yes.
Because our complaints are just with like a couple of sloppy executions.
Yeah. And I think these are some of his older books too, because he's got another book called Around the Dark Dial, which is a bunch of I think horror stories, sci-fi related horror stories.
The other thing I would like to say too is that this is the type of story, like after having read it, that I could easily see someone like the Sci-Fi Channel
picking up as like a B sci-fi.
Picking up the rights to make like a low budget TV series out of, because it's perfect for that. Like it doesn't have any massive special effects that are going to be needed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great content for a TV series with an interesting premise.
Or even just a low budget movie.
I feel like it's better as a TV series, but
it probably would work better as a TV series if you want to expand it. If you just want to do what's there, I think it works better as a movie.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I say TV series is because you have a lot of moving pieces in a lot of different locations, and trying to jam pack that into a movie.
Maybe a mini series.
Maybe. I'm just saying there's too many different scenes of different characters in different locations. Like that lends itself far better to a TV series than a movie.
Yeah. I still think B sci-fi movie works better because then you don't have to expand the story that's already there. I feel like if you do a TV series, producers are going to have to add stuff.
Not if you combine the books.
Well, if you combine the books, sure. You could do one season.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else y'all want to say?
Nothing for me.
Yeah, I think we covered it. Beat these books pretty good.
I do appreciate JD Sanderson hopping out there and throwing us a bone saying, hey, check out my book. So shout out to you. And I am going to pull up his book real quick so that we can show off his new one real quick.
Yeah, it's terrifying having other people read your books. So the fact that he reached out to complete strangers to have them read it, that's pretty amazing. And again, premise, you already are okay with people reading your books. Like you're right there, man.
It's good. It is good.
Yeah, here's his next book. After the Syzygy, it's $2.99, just like the last one. You can pre-order it right now. It's coming out on December 11th. So if you're looking for last-minute Christmas gifts for people who like sci-fi, there you go.
Didn't he have another book too that is already out? Okay.
Yeah. His other, I'll just pull it up. He's got Around the Dark Dial, Remnants, which I did not take a chance looking at that yet. Volume 1, and then I'll have to figure out what this Remnants thing is. But Around the Dark Dial, Footstep Echo, and then I don't know what this. Oh, this is a paperback. I don't know what that is. Don't know enough about it. Oh wow, $36 for whatever this is.
For a hardcover, man.
Oh, hardcover. Okay.
The thing to remember with this guy is his books are very, very affordable. And
yes.
Kindle Unlimited will let you read most of his books already. So,
yep. Most of them are available.
Literally don't lose anything by reading these.
But support indie authors. If you're going to get it and you don't have Kindle Unlimited, don't try and find this on the dark web. Make sure you spend $2.99. Pack of bubble gum. All right.
With inflation. Yeah.
As always, I'm Chris.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Will.
Oh, and what's our next book? I forgot.
The next book is A World Lit Only by Fire, The Medieval Mind and the Renaissance by William Manchester.
What jerk of this podcast picked that book? Anyways, as always, we'll see you on the next one, guys.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care.
Yeah, bye, guys.